to keep access to all your amazing Google stuff while we're moving from Classroom into Brightspace. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm with the Office of Instructional Technology, and joining me today is Coralina McKenna from Brooklyn Park Middle School, e-coach extraordinaire, soon to be Brightspace champion, all around awesome. She's going to be monitoring the chat for me and making sure that that we keep up with questions that are coming in from everybody. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. I know she's dropped this into the chat a few times already, so I'll skip past it for now and we'll put it up there a little bit later on for anybody that joins a little bit late. Basic housekeeping items for our session today. Please keep your microphone on mute so that we can minimize the distractions and random noises and things. Any questions that you guys have, we invite you to drop them into the chat. As I said, Coral's going to be manning that. She's going to be keeping up. If questions come in that she can't answer or that she thinks are great for the whole group, we're going to stop occasionally. We're going to address some of those questions out loud to make sure that you guys are getting the best information you can. Please make sure you're keeping up with that attendance form. You've probably heard it over and over and over in all of these sessions, but that is what is going to get you credit for attending and staying for the entire conference. Presentations and recordings will be in the conference course. I know the presentation should already be there. The recordings, we're just asking you to give us till the end of the week because they take a little time to process. We got to clean them up. We got to get them onto YouTube and so on. But we will get those up there so that if you need to rewatch something from a session to be reminded, you'll have access to those recordings. And then the last little tidbit that I meant to add to these after day one, some of the feedback after the very first sessions was that some presentations were a little too small for people to really keep up with what people were doing in that. So what we're recommending, if you're really trying to focus on what I'm doing and it's too small, if you use the spotlight option in your layout, that will maximize my screen that I'm sharing with you guys instead of you looking at the lovely faces of all of our co-participants, which is great, but it doesn't allow you to focus on what I'm sharing. So if you take a look at your Meet toolbar across the bottom, you've got your little snowman there, your 3 dots. If you click on that and go to layout, one of the layout options is spotlight. If you choose that one, that'll really dedicate most of your space to my presentation rather than, again, letting all of those lovely icons and smiling faces share the screen. So our agenda today, we're going to start off talking about something called Google Assignments and why we appreciate the Google Assignments for your Google files, why those are what you should be using. Then we're going to go step by step how to set up a Google assignment. We're even going to go over and look at the student view of what it looks like when you give them a Google assignment. Then we're going to talk about Google Forms because they are just a little bit different. Unfortunately, they don't work with the Google assignment feature, so we have to have an alternative for forms, tricky little forms. But I will go through those for you. And then last thing on our agenda today is we're going to talk about those collaborative assignments. I know after spending a year online, from what I saw, lots of teachers had students working together in the same file. And that, again, is going to be a little bit different with your Google files when you're sharing them through Brightspace. So we're going to talk about some tips for how to have the best experience with using collaborative assignments. So with that, let's talk about that Google assignment feature and why we're saying it's the best choice if you have Google files to share with your students. Like, why can't I just use the basic assignment feature that's built into Brightspace? So if what I want to give to my students is a Google Doc, and let's say it's got some questions on the page, and I actually want them to be able to click and type in that doc. I want them to get their own copy of it and edit it. When I put a Google Doc or any type of Google file into a Brightspace assignment and share it with my students, the permission is view only, which means each kid in my class now has to click and make a copy of that document. Now they have their own copy that they can work in, but I can't see them working in it in real time until they're done, and then they share it back with me. And chances are when they share it back with me, they're going to share it view only, which means I can't comment on their work. I can't give them feedback in that file. So for everybody who's transitioning from Google Classroom, everybody who was with us last year, it's very different than what we've come to expect when Google Classroom lets us make a copy for all the kids. They can work in it. We can see them working in it in real time. And that's what the Google Assignments feature is going to allow us to do. It's going to mimic the experience that we're used to from Classroom. And that's why we prefer it over the Brightspace assignments for your Google files. So with that, let's hop out of this presentation, and I'm going to get into Brightspace, and I'm actually going to show you guys how to do that Google assignment. So here we are on my Brightspace, and I'm just using my Sandbox course. So all I've done at this point is clicked into my Sandbox class, and all of your assignment types are always going to be found under Content. So I'm going to click here on Content. And then the first level is what Brightspace calls these units over here down the left-hand side. And when I want to create an assignment for my students, all I have to do is click on a unit or click to create a new unit. I'm going to use this one here called G in BS because that is the session we're in. And then I have two buttons on the right to start creating something new. This is the part that's weird when you're looking for the Google assignments. They're actually under Add Existing. I know that's weird. I haven't created it yet. It doesn't exist, but that's the button where you find Google Assignments. So I'm going to click on Add Existing, and then we're going to go down here to More. So Add Existing and More. And there your Google assignments are right here with that little blue icon to the left of them. Keep in mind, you see lots of other Google options. If I cancel out of this, there's Google Drive. If I go back into More, you'll see we have Google File Embed. We have Google Meet. The only one that truly replicates the experience we had in Classroom is Google Assignments. So don't click on anything else Google. Go to the one that says Google Assignments. It is always going to ask you to log in. I'm already logged into Chrome. I'm already logged into Google. It asks me to sign in anyway. But as soon as I click to sign in, it opens up a window that, again, for everybody transitioning from Classroom, this should look very familiar to you. This is basically the exact same window when we were creating assignments in Classroom. We have the point value, the option to choose a due date, an area for a title, instructions, adding the rubrics, Originality Reports, and attaching our files. So let's go through each of these. One of the differences with these Google assignments, I have to have a point value. In Classroom, I could actually choose ungraded. I cannot do that here. I can choose any point value I want, but I have to have a points assigned to this one. If I click on the little calendar icon, I can choose a due date for this. So we'll say it's going to be due on Thursday, the 29th. I can even set a time. If I don't type in a specific time, it does default to midnight or 11:59 p.m. Type in the title here. Super fancy title. We're going to call this sample assignment. Type in the instructions for what I want the students to do. Let's take a brief look at the rubric options here. Again, they are identical to what you might have been using in Google Classroom. So I can reuse a rubric, I can import a rubric from Google Sheets, or just click to create one from scratch. Rubrics can include different criterion. So I could have spelling. We'll say spelling's going to be worth 3 points, and the first level is you did great because you had no spelling mistakes. Add a new level is 2 points, and this one's okay because you had some spelling mistakes down under the description, and then maybe I'd have 1 point, 0 points if your spelling mistakes were so bad that I couldn't even understand what you were saying. Notice as you add different criterion, let's add one more down here, and we'll just put in the points are 4. It starts totaling them up. So we're now up to a total of 7 points because my first criterion, which was spelling, and my second one that I hadn't titled yet, were 3 and 4. So it is totaling those up. Once you have your entire rubric built, you can click Save over here in the upper right-hand corner, and it's attached so that students can see exactly how they'll be graded for this assignment. I'm going to close out of it because I didn't finish it. And we'll just say we'll discard it. Moving below, again, we have a feature that is specific to Google Classroom, and that is the Originality Reports. It allows students to scan their own file, or you as the teacher to scan their file against information on the web. You're looking for plagiarism. You're looking to see if they just went to Wikipedia or some other common site, copied everything that was there and just plunked it into their paper and tried to pass it off as their own work. But the other thing the Originality Reports allow you to do is look for missing citations. It's not always fair to say our kids are genuinely trying to copy from Wikipedia. They may just be getting a little too close to the original without citing it properly. So Originality Reports, again, are going to look for plagiarism, missing citations, and things like that. We do have an unlimited number of Originality Reports in our Google Plus accounts. So if you read any information online that says you're maxed out at 5 or 3 or whatever, that's for the free Google account. We pay for what used to be Enterprise, now it's Google Plus. So we do have unlimited. So especially for my middle and high school folks having kids doing research projects, feel free to use those Originality Reports to kind of keep the kids accountable for their work. Last stop down here is that attachment. Get the Google file that you want to share to your students. When you click, it allows you to search your recent, My Drive. You can even upload your files and access your shared drives. So I'm going to click right here on the document that I want to share and choose Add. One more thing that is different about Google assignments than what we expected in Classroom, the only option is to give every student a copy. When we used this same tool inside of Google Classroom, we could make it view only, we could make it collaborative, or we could give them a copy. Nope, this one is just to give every student a copy. That's why we're going to talk about collaborative in a completely separate part of this session today. I can continue to add more files if I need them to have several files. I don't even have to attach any files. If I want the kids to just make their own file, I can do that as well. But I'm going to stop with one file and say that I'm done and I'm ready to create my assignment. Coraline, I see lots of stuff popping up. Do we have anything from the chat that we should jump on and address right away?
There are a couple of things. One was just clarifying whether the total points can be set to 0 or how to deal with this if it's an ungraded assignment.
No, unfortunately, you do have to have a point value for these, so it will have to be 1 or a number greater than 1. If you try and set it to 0, it throws error messages at you. So again, we're losing out on that option we had in Classroom that allowed you to just pick ungraded, and we're also losing those options for how you give the students the file. It's always going to be make a copy for each.
Okay. There's also just some clarifying questions about your plagiarism checker. Pretty quick. Do you know if it checks math apps? Like, will it flag numbers?
I do not know if it will flag numbers. I assume we're talking about like the ability for students to type an equation or an expression into the browser and actually have it solve it for them. I mean, you know, these things have gotten pretty advanced, so the kids can. Yeah, Christy says that's what she's. Yeah,
it was her question, and so.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if it would flag that because part of the problem is. I mean, the concept that an equation or an expression could truly be 100% unique. So I don't know if it would say that that exists out on the web or if it would search one of those. I don't know. I'd say you might have to try that out. I mean, make an assignment, try copying and pasting something from the web and see if it red flags that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click create. And I have a Google assignment ready to go. Assignment not created. Okay, that's great. I love it when it does these things. Let's dismiss that message. We're going to try this one more time. See, I want you guys to know that it's not only you guys that you're like, why does this happen to me every day in my class? All right, we might have to cancel out of this one and just try it again. Okay. Bear with me here. Oh, it does look like it was created. No file. One file attachment. Sample assignment. Okay. Let's see if it actually created it, even though it kept saying it wasn't creating it. Linked form sample assignment. Ooh, maybe. Oh, that's the one from yesterday. That's all right. I'm going to use it. Okay, so this is what it should look like when the assignment is created for you. You'll see a list of all of your students underneath. Please forgive the fact that it says my son has already submitted it because it's looking at yesterday's. So when I did this session yesterday, he had submitted it right there. But you can see the students there. Even if a student hasn't submitted it yet, you can click on them and you get into what we have always referred to as the integrated grading window. So again, identical from Google Classroom. You've got all of your students listed up here under the drop down. You can toggle between them. You have the option over here on the right hand side to see all of the files that you gave the students, to give them a grade and give them feedback when it's submitted. What I want to do before we get too far into that is I want to show you what it looks like from a student's view. So here we are in my sandbox, but we're in my son's account. Gotta borrow his. They don't give anybody fake students. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're in my same course in his account, and I'm going to click on content. And he follows the exact same process to find the assignment that I did to create it. He's going to go to the unit that's appropriate for it and click on the assignment. And then just choose open to attach and submit. And because he's already submitted it, it says he's all set, but he can click right here on the link to open it. And the file is there. He can add his work if it wasn't already submitted, and close the tab when he's done, because this is just a Google Doc. It saves everything automatically, just like Docs always has. And when he's done, he just clicks the submit button down here that now says unsubmit, because he's already turned it into me. Questions about the student view?
I don't think about the student view. Can teachers still make comments on it while the students are actively working?
Yeah, absolutely. Through that integrated grading window, that's why this is just such a great option for you. If you still have a lot of Google files that you're giving to your students, I can highlight some of the text here that the student is working on. I can click on my make a comment and I can say something like check your spelling here, and it doesn't matter whether he's turned it into me or not at this point. I'm commenting, he can see those comments in real time. Anything else relevant for right now?
Can the student unsubmit the submitted document?
Yes, they will be able to unsubmit until after the due date. Once the due date is passed, they actually get a message that says they're not allowed to unsubmit at that point. Okay. I think I've got everything from my notes. Give me a second. I'm just scanning to make sure I covered everything I meant to. All right. So let's pull up my little checklist here. And oftentimes these checklists are just for me to make sure that I covered everything and that I'm really drawing attention to some of the things that are most important from each of the topics that we're going to talk about. So as we said, Google assignments must have a point value. That's a difference for my folks that are transitioning from classroom. It doesn't require an attachment. If I want to give the students a choice, hey, you can use Google Drawings to create this, you can use Google Slides, I can just give them the instructions and not attach anything, and they have a button in their view of the Google assignment that still allows them to add or create a file from scratch. So you can do what we've always referred to as a blank assignment if you want to allow the students to make their own attachment to turn back into you. The attach button in Google Assignments, again, is a little bit different than what we saw in Google Classroom because it doesn't include the option to link to a YouTube video or to link to another file type. So what we would recommend is that you put those in that instructions area. If you've got a link to a video on Discovery Ed, if you've got a link to a template on Wixie, just drop it into the instructions when you're creating the assignment and it'll be a clickable link for the kids. As we said, the only option when you attach a file is make a copy for each, which again is why we're going to talk about collaborative in a completely different place. The Google Assignments does not work for forms. I mentioned that at the beginning. If you try to attach a form, it actually gives you a message that a form is not a worksheet. which means we have to have a different way of giving students forms, not using the Google Assignments, because it just doesn't work for forms. So we'll also cover that here in just a few minutes. We love the fact that you can monitor students' progress in real time before they've turned it in, after they've turned it in. You have access to their files if you gave them that attachment. Something to keep in mind, and my little plug for my managing calendar session, Google Assignments do not show on the calendar in Brightspace or any to-do list in Brightspace. Unfortunately, this integration between Google and Brightspace just doesn't communicate to that extent where those assignments actually show up on the calendar. That's the whole reason we have a session called Managing Calendars, because if you're using Google Assignments, you're going to have to come up with means to keep your students on track. They need to know when their assignments are done. And I don't think the best practice is to just tell them to click and open every single assignment and look at the due date. We need a way for them to manage that. Last thing down here is that a little bit different from Google Classroom. Again, you can't grade an assignment until it is submitted by a student. Again, in Google Classroom, we could sort of force that grade, even if the student had forgotten to submit it, but had already done all the work in the file. In this one, they are going to have to submit it to you before you can grade it. Coralina, anything about Google Assignments before we transition from this topic and go to forms?
I think I've been able to answer all of them.
Awesome. Okay, then we are going to actually transition. We're going to get away from talking about Google Assignments. We're going to hop in and talk about how to manage those forms since they don't work with the Google Assignments option. So for that, I'm going to go back to Brightspace, and I'm just going to click back on my course home to kind of remove all the visual noise from the screen here. When you want to give your students a form, you're going to use something other than the Google Assignments option. So I'm going to click on Content again. And you do have a couple of options here. If I choose this same unit, I can go to Create New, and I can just do it as like an HTML document and just link the form on the page. Students will be able to click the link. They'll be able to open the form and fill it out. There's no point value. There's no due date. If I actually want to give it to them as an assignment, where I give them a point value and a due date for this quiz, I'm going to choose the assignment option here. This is Brightspace Assignments. The one that doesn't work for all the other Google files works for forms. So I'm going to click assignment because I want to have that point value and that due date associated with it. So the name of the form that I'm going to use today is called Trivia. This one actually does allow you to do ungraded, but I know it's a 6-point quiz. Click to add my due date here. Oh, we'll have this one due today just to be different. Again, you can pick a time. If you don't, it will default to midnight. And then I have two different options for how I can give the students the form. I can link to the form, or I can embed the form. If I want to link the form, I'm going to use one of the options down here, like this attach web link, or even this option to attach from Google Drive, which opens up the same window for me to go through and find that form in here. I've already linked a Google form as an example. So what I want to show you guys live is what it looks like, or the steps necessary to embed the form so that it opens right here inside of the same window in Brightspace. In order to embed a form, I have to get the embed link for the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my drive and I'm going to open that trivia quiz that I want to give to my students. Then I'm going to click on Send in the upper right-hand corner. And Embed Links, the icon for embed always looks like these two little arrows pointing out. They point left and right. That means embed code. That's that universal icon for get an embed code. So I'm going to click on that one, and then I'm going to copy that embed HTML right there. And then I'm going to go back to Brightspace, and what I'm looking for is that exact same icon, those two arrows. They're actually under the ... more. And there it is. Then I'm going to paste in what I just copied from the form and click Save. And it's going to put the form right here on the same page so that they can see the whole thing without having to click and go to another tab. It puts the whole form right here for them. Coralina, questions about embedding?
None that I can see yet, but I have been able, one just popped in. We'll be able to access shared drives for this function, or do we have to access them through the link? You're getting responses the same way you normally would. The responses will end up in the form.
Do we have to embed, or can we copy the link of the Google
You can
form?
do the link as well, and we're going to talk about why you might choose one over the other in just a moment. Just showing you the two options. You can link to the form or you can embed it. Okay, so I've got two more things I need to do before I'm ready to click Save and Close. Number one, this isn't currently visible to my students. So if it's an assignment for right now, and I chose the due date today, I need to make it visible. The other thing is all Brightspace assignments by default are set to require the students to attach a file to the assignment in order to turn it into me. That's not what I want. I'm not asking them to attach anything to this, which means I need to change the assignment type so that it will allow them to turn it in having just completed the form. No need for an extra attachment. Changing those settings is right here on the right-hand side where it says Submission and Completion. I'm going to click this toggle arrow. And you'll see right now it says submission type is called file submission. They have to attach something new to turn it into me. What we have found works is on paper, which basically means a kid is going to show me their work by bringing me a physical piece of paper, but it works for this because it tricks Brightspace into saying you don't need to add anything else. So we're going to choose on paper. And then one last thing, under where it says marked as complete, we just recommend letting the student do it. Let the learner say, I'm done with my quiz. So I went to submission and completion. I changed the default submission type from file to on paper, and I changed who can indicate that they're done by letting the learner, the student, choose that. All right, and now I've got everything in here for my form and I'm ready to click Save and Close. So now we have a brand new assignment here. That's the trivia quiz. Once again, I want to go to the student view and show you what it looks like for my kid. So here we are back in his account. He goes to content. He chooses the appropriate unit, and we have two, because I told you guys I already linked a form that I was just going to show you what it looks like. And then we have the brand new one that I just added for him down here called Trivia. So let me start with what the linked form looks like for a student. When he clicks on this, he gets a button here that says Go to Assignment. And then this is what the assignment looks like for him. He sees the title is called Linked Google Form, the instructions that say click the link to complete the quiz, and then the only other thing he has is a link. When he clicks that link, this form opens in a new tab all by itself. He can answer all the questions in this, and at the bottom he has a button to submit the form. Once he's submitted the form, he can close this tab and he can click Mark as Complete to turn this assignment into me, to tell me, I'm done, I've taken my quiz. So linked means it opens in a new tab, and there's two places he has to click to indicate he's done. Submit the form, which actually captures the responses. Mark as Complete tells me, his teacher, he's done. I took my quiz. The other one, the embed, let's go back to content here. Now we're looking at the embedded one. He clicks on Trivia. Once again, he chooses Go to Assignment. But the title, the instructions, and the entire form are all on one page with the Submit button right here and the Mark as Complete button right there on the same page. So less click, less tabs, but two buttons on the same page. So let's talk for a moment, and then we'll take a look at the chat and see what questions we have. Let's talk for a moment about why you might use link versus embed. We put together a lovely little graphic for you to really kind of show the difference when it comes to your forms. Starting on the left-hand side, an embedded form means the submit button and the mark is complete button are on the same page. Submit is important. If the students click mark is complete, their answers aren't actually captured in the form. If they close the tab and navigate away from it, they will lose all their answers in the form. If you link a form, they click, it opens in a new tab. The form owns that tab. The submit button is at the bottom. The mark is complete is in the other tab where the assignment is. I'm not here to tell you which one is better, but when I taught middle school, I can guarantee you my kids would have clicked mark is complete without clicking submit, and they would have lost their answers. Not every time, but it's still frustrating if it only happens to one kid. So I would have linked my forms because the submit button is on the page for the form. Hard to miss. Mark is complete is over here. If they don't click submit, they will lose their answers. Forms is supposed to be changing that. They're actually saving answers, but we don't know when that's coming. So I wouldn't count on it being available for your first day of school. All right, questions about forms, linking versus embedding.
I don't think so. There's just a few that I can answer right now. If you set it to randomize the questions in the Google form, it should still do that with the embedded link.
Absolutely. Yep. It's forms. It's forms. So, yep.
There is some questions about the way the size, which you just showed on your son, saying how it shows up, and then translating. If you wanted to translate, then it would need to open in a different tab. Right, if they're translating Google Chrome.
I would definitely recommend letting it open in a different tab instead of the embed. Size is actually another consideration. I mean, I am working on a fairly big monitor here right now, and you can see that this form is not taking up a whole lot of space on this monitor. But remember that our students' Chromebooks are significantly smaller than even the screens that we have on our laptops. So be mindful of embedding things in basically any type of assignment, because that screen for our students on their Chromebooks is pretty small. So if you're going to try embedding something, I would definitely get a look at it on a student's Chromebook before you commit to that as your best practice, because I think you'll find that for a lot of things, your Google Docs, your Google Slides, even your forms, you might think that embedding it is going to look really pretty, but the first time a kid tries to see it on their screen and it's this big on their Chromebook screen, you might very quickly pivot to preferring to link things. So be mindful of that Chromebook screen's pretty small.
Ms. Kinney, it did get answered. If you're wanting to be able, the students be able to translate, it will need to be opened in a different tab. There's also, again, if you're using Google Forms, the answers are where they would normally be in Google Forms. You're still going to go to your Drive, open up the form, and go to responses.
Correct. Yeah, and that's actually a really good thing to sort of add on here to clarify that Forms does not communicate responses to Brightspace. It's not going to communicate your score to Brightspace. So if you're doing this as a point value, an assignment with points, you need to manually enter in the points that those students earn before returning it to them so that they can see that information. So again, we're not getting quite the level of integration that we had with Google Classroom, but we're doing our best to work around some of those things. And so if you're doing it as an assignment with points and a due date and things like that, you will have to give those points back to the kids.
And I think that is basically, oh, there was the on paper option and manual by learner. Is that marked whether they're using the link or embedding, correct?
Yes. Yes, you're going to want to do that every single time if you're giving them the file that you want them to give back to you, because by default, it requires them to attach something, which again, I can imagine would be very frustrating for our students when they try to click submit and it says you can't submit this, you haven't attached anything. Well, if I'm not asking them to attach anything, then I'm really kind of setting them up for that frustration. So, so definitely think about that. Okay, so here's our little checklist to make sure that I hit on the big things that are super important for forms. Use the Brightspace assignments, not Google assignments. The first time you try to put a form in a Google assignment, you're going to see that error. A form is not a worksheet. So Brightspace assignments, or you can just use that one called HTML. If you don't care about points and you don't care about a due date, just do it as a page with a link on the page. That works great. Think about that embed versus link. What's going to set your students up for the best success? You guys have to think about that with the kids that you work with. And then do not forget to change the submission type to on paper, and who can mark it as complete as that user, that learner there. All right, so one more time, we're going to make a big, huge transition. Let's make sure I got everything from forms. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we're going to switch over and we're going to talk about collaborative assignments. Whether you want the whole class into one assignment together, I saw lots of teachers using that this year, where they'd have like a Google Slides file and every slide had a student's name on it, and you'd just give the whole class editing permission on that file and say, find your slide, do your work right there. And it seemed to work great for a lot of teachers. And I know you'd love to be able to keep that in your repertoire for this year. So we're going to talk about how to make collaborative assignments work when Google assignments are going to make a copy for every student and Brightspace assignments are going to make it view only. And what we have come up with is a great option for this is actually shared drives. If you set up a shared drive for your whole class, or set up shared drives for your small groups, if you invite the students to those shared drives and give them the right level of permissions, we're going to talk about that in just a second, they can actually access any file that you put into that shared drive moving forward, and they'll be able to edit it and work in that group that you set up, whole class, small group. So we're going to get into a shared drive here in a moment, and I'm going to enroll some students in my shared drive. But I want to show you guys a really simple way to get all of your students, or even a small group, into a shared drive. And we're going to do that with a form. So what I've done here is I've created a very simple Google form. It literally just had one question: which group are you in? And in this scenario, I've got groups named things like red, blue, green. And let's say I've already told the kids, you're in the red group, you're in the blue group, you're in the green group. If this is for my whole class, I could just have a single question that says, what's your name? The other thing that is super important is up here in my settings. So I'm going to come up here to this little gear, this little cog wheel in the upper right. I've set it to collect emails because that's what I need to get the students into my shared drive. I need their SIF number at aacps.org. So I've set it to collect that from them automatically. And then I had a bunch of my colleagues fill this form out for me so that I could use them as examples of my students. So here we are in the spreadsheet that is created from this form. And you can see it's captured their email addresses by default, and then they put in the group that they were assigned. And what I really love about this sheet is it allows me to just click this little drop down here for column C and alphabetize by those groups. So now I have a block right here for my red group, and I can just highlight everybody's email address, copy them, and then I go back to my Google Drive and I'm ready to create a shared drive for my red group. So I'm here in Google Drive, I've clicked on shared drives, and now I'm going to click new, because if I click on shared drives before I click new, it's not creating a new doc or a new folder. It's creating a new drive. And I'm going to call this red group and click create. So now I have a brand new shared drive ready for my red group, and I want to add my people to it. I can click the little drop down here where it says red group, or even over here on the right where it says manage members. Both of them give me the same options. I'm going to paste in all those people that I just copied a moment ago, and I didn't have to sit there typing out a bunch of student ID numbers. It just copied them straight from that sheet that was created automatically from my very simple one question form. Now let's talk about permissions. When you add students to a shared drive, you want to make sure you give them the right permissions so that they can work collaboratively. Too few permissions, they can't collaborate. Too many permissions, they can do a lot more than just collaborate. When you create a shared drive, there's 5 levels of permissions. Starting at the lowest level, they're view only. They can see all the files. They can't do anything in the files. Second level is commenter. They can see all the files. They can comment on the files, but they can't do anything collaboratively. Then we come to contributor. That's the one we prefer. Let's skip it for a moment and talk about those top two. Content managers, unfortunately, allow them to not only edit the files, but they can delete them. I don't want students deleting the files that are in the shared drive. And then managers allow them to not only manage content, but they can manage people, which means they can delete each other. I don't want that either. So our best option is contributor right there in the middle. It allows them to add files to the shared drive. They can create their own stuff and put it on the shared drive. And it allows them to edit the content that's in the files that I have there, so they can do exactly what I want them to do, but no more than that. So we're going to click to make these guys contributors. I can type out a message that they would get in email if I wanted to. I'm actually not going to notify them because they're all presenting in other sessions right now and they don't want to be notified. And I'm going to click share. So now all of those people have access to this shared drive and any file that I put here. So if I want to have a collaborative assignment for this group tomorrow, I can create any sort of document out here in my drive. See if we can find my sample file here quickly. And what I want to do is I want to make a copy of this for my red group. I want to make a copy for my green group. I want to make a copy for my blue group. I want to move the copy into each of those shared drives for them. So right here on my sample doc, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose make a copy. There's my copy. Now I want to right click and I want to choose rename the file because this is for my red group. So we're going to call red sample. One more time, right click, 3 times, made a copy, I renamed it. Now I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose move. If you have not practiced moving stuff around in Google Drive, it's a lot about left arrows to get it out of the folder it's in and right arrows to get it into the folder you want it to go in. So first, I need to get this out of the folders it's in my drive, which means I'm going to click the left arrow. I'm going to click the left arrow until I see shared drives. Now I'm going to click the right arrow. I'm going to find that red group, which is going to be all the way down at the bottom under ours. There we go. And I'm going to click the right arrow again, and I'm going to choose move here. Gone. It's over there in the shared drive where everybody in my red group has access to it. So now we come to the final step for your collaborative. How do you let the kids know they have a document in their red group shared drive? That's up to you. First option, direct your students to go to Google Drive. They'll see the menu option that says shared drives. When they click on it, they'll see the red group shared drive sitting right there, and they can go into it and open their file. If you prefer to give them more guidance than that, I want them to if I'm going to use this shared drive all year long, eventually there's going to be a lot of files in here. And those kids could get lost pretty easily if I just tell them, go to Drive, find the file, you'll see it, it's right there. I might want to give them more guidance than that. I might want to give them a specific link to that file where it is in their shared drive. So what I can do in the red group shared drive is I can actually click on this file and get a link to it. I don't want to change the restriction because I only want my red group students to be able to edit it. So I'm not going to change this at all. I'm just going to copy the link and click done. And then one of the things that we put together for you guys was like a sample document of how you would get these links to each of your students. So I can change this thing over here that was called group 1 to red group. And put my link in there. And then I can take this entire document and share it with my students through a Brightspace assignment. Link to it on that HTML page, put it in as a Google assignment. I can get them this document and they all have the link to click to get to their file. Now, the concern is, well, what if somebody in the blue group clicks on the red group's link? Doesn't matter. They're not a member of the red group shared drive. They're going to get a message that their access is denied. So it doesn't matter if I take this document and share it with everybody. They can all only get to the files that I gave them permission to in the shared drive. So one of the things I would recommend for you guys, if you're excited about collaborative, create a shared drive at the beginning of the year and invite all your students from your whole class into it. It's there, it's ready for you to use it whenever you want to do something collaborative for your whole class. For some of you, you may have additional shared drives. If you have what I call meaningful grouping, like your reading groups, they stay pretty fixed for the whole year. You might choose to create a shared drive for each of your reading groups. If you're doing a one-time group, hey, I'm letting you four work together for this, you don't have to create a shared drive. You don't have to create a shared drive for just a one-time grouping. If it's a group that's going to be used over and over and over again, a shared drive saves you the time because you're not constantly inviting the same group of kids to that file or that folder. You've just got the drive ready for you to put a file in there and it's immediately accessible for that group. Questions about shared drives. This is the one that ends up being a lot of steps to get one thing accomplished. And everybody's like, okay, my brain's full.
I think I was able to get most of them. There was some questions like, yes, you can edit the members.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can change level if you click the wrong one. You can link, like Tracy mentioned this, you can link directly, like you can take the link from an assignment and link it directly into Brightspace. They click on the link and it's going to open up this assignment for them. And yeah.
And you don't even have to use a document like this. You could just open a page in Brightspace and put red group link and drop it right on the blue group link, drop it right on the page, red, purple, whatever colors, whatever your group names are, and just drop their link right there and click make it viewable to the students. And again, if they're clicking on the wrong links, they're not getting anywhere. So you're not going to have kids going into the wrong assignment trying to sabotage it because you've already invited them to the correct shared drives and ensured that they can only access what you want them to.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So go ahead and drop that attendance link in for any of our late joiners. Let's do our little bulleted list of all the important things I wanted to make sure to share with you guys about collaborative assignments. Make the copies for your groups in advance. If this is a one shared drive for the whole class, great, drop the assignment right in there. But if you've got different shared drives for your reading groups or something, make all your copies, name them so you know which copy is for each group. You will need separate shared drives for each group. You're not going to be able to just do one and tell everybody to go into it with different folders or something like that. That's where you end up with kids in the wrong place and messing with somebody else's assignment. Use forms to quickly enroll your students. All you need is that SIF number. You could actually pull a whole roster from, PowerSchool and just copy that column that has the student's SIF number and drop them into that share. When you create the shared drive, they're in. The preferred level for your students is contributors. Make them all contributors. They get exactly the right permissions, but not too many. Share the link to the assignment. If it's a whole folder with several attachments, you can get a link to the whole folder to share it in there. You can even do a link to the whole shared drive just by copying the link that appears and the web address at the top when you open up the shared drive. Or depending on the level and independence of your students, just direct them to go to Google Drive, click on shared drives, and they're sitting right there for them. So as I said, if you want to know a little bit more about keeping your students informed about when their Google assignments are due, I'm plugging my next session, which is managing calendars in Brightspace. Lots of tips for how to add that additional piece that's kind of missing here. And our last stop here is to talk about resources. All of our resources to help you guys get more familiar with Google assignments, using forms, and your shared drives are on our Teacher Intro to Digital Tools on ClassLink under both content and assignments and Google assignments. So let's hop out real quick and show you guys that. It's right here. It's the big Google G. It says Teacher Intro to Digital Tools. When you click on it and you hover over Brightspace, we've got Google in Brightspace as well as Brightspace content and assignments. We'll start with Google. Using Google Files in Brightspace, lots of videos, some of these printable directions, that sample document that I showed you guys for using small group collaboration, how to use the Google assignments, short videos for each, some printable directions for those, and last stop, content and assignments. If this then that can help you choose which type of assignment you want to use in any given scenario. Tips like understanding the different content levels, moving new units to the top, how to use your Brightspace assignments, and Brightspace quizzes, all there. All right, guys, 11:50, we'll go ahead and stop the recording here.